Okay, in this week's Torah portion, it's a very fascinating story. And every time you read the story, you wonder, like, what does the story mean? We're talking about the blessing that Yaakov got from his father Yitzchak before he passed away. Torah tells us that Yitzchak wanted to bless his son Esav, the older son, and his mother Rivka hears that his father wants to give away this great blessing to this treacherous individual, this terrible guy, Esav. And so she thinks of a plan. What's the plan? That she's going to give her son Yaakov the clothing of Esav, and he's going to Yitzchak was then blind, and he's going to wear the clothing of Esav. He's going to pretend that he is Esav, and Yitzchak is going to bless him, thinking that he's Esav. And the Torah continues and says that after Yaakov gets the blessings, Esav comes, and Esav goes to his father and he says, "Dad, please bless me." And his father says, "Your brother has come with trickery and taking your blessing." That's the word. Those are the words of the Torah. Your brother has come with trickery and taking your blessing. Now, the writing on the wall is clear. Who is the one who was doing all the trickery? His mother Rivka. And the question is, why does this have to be through trickery? Why is there a need for this deception over here? Yitzchak and Rivka, you know how long they're married for this time in the story? They're married for 84 years.
Wow.
And so they already have, a lot of a wonderful relationship going on for 84 years. And the question is, why, when Yitzchak turns 123 on his 123rd birthday, David,
Good morning, Rabbi.
is there this need for her to not speak openly and clearly to her husband and just tell him, hey, the blessings really should go to Yaakov. Why does she have to go through this trickery? And Yaakov also is shocked when his mother tells him that she wants him to pretend that he is his brother, and Rivka has to convince him. His mother says, "Don't worry if your father curses you." Yaakov says, "What happens if he curses me?" Rivka says, "Don't worry, if he curses you, the curse will go on me." So why can't she just go straight over to her husband and say, Yaakov should get the blessings? The Torah tells us earlier on how Hashem told Abraham to listen to the voice of Sarah. The Talmud says that the matriarchs were greater prophets than the patriarchs. So it would make sense for Yitzchak to listen to Rivka if she would just tell him the truth. The question is greater. I mean, it's not just that she had a vision at that point in her life, but who would be the one to receive God's blessings, about who would carry the future. When she was pregnant with Esav and Yaakov, the prophet Shem told her, "Rav Yavitzayim," that the younger one will rule over the older one. She knew the younger one is going to be greater than the older one. She knew her younger son is definitely the one that needs the blessings. So all she needed to do was to remind her husband at 64 years ago, 20 years after their marriage, she got this prophecy. And remember, the one who should get the blessing is the younger one. The younger one is greater than the older one. So that's a question about Rivka. But the question is not only about Rivka. The question is also about Hashem. Hashem himself orchestrated things to be this way. The Torah says that Yitzchak's eyes were dimmed. And Rashi explains, why were his eyes dimmed? Why did God make him blind? In order that Yaakov should be able to get the blessings. And therefore, he made Yitzchak blind, so he shouldn't be able to see Yaakov, so Yaakov should get the blessings. Now, is that the best way to give the blessings to Yaakov? It's not a very easy thing to be blind, right? The Talmud says being blind is like death. Wouldn't it be better, easier, just to tell Yitzchak instead of pulling the wool over his eyes, why not open his eyes so you could see who is really deserving of the blessings? Why why is it that Hashem had to make Yitzchak blind for this to happen? So there is another time we read later on in the Torah, Parshat Vayechi, where Yaakov already is blind, and yet he blesses his two children, two grandchildren, Ephraim and Manasseh, and although he's blind, he consents that the younger brother should get the greater blessing. So just like Yaakov had this prophecy, despite being blind, Yitzchak also could have given this prophecy. He could have been told what will come out of Esav, what will come out of Yaakov. What's the need for this, for Hashem to make him blind? And we see that being blind doesn't really make a difference for tzaddikim. They can be blind and still see more than we can. So what's going on over here? There is a Chassidic teaching that comes from the Chassidic masters of Poland. Some say this comes from Yitzchak Barka. Some say it comes from Chaim of Tzanz. Some say that the Rebbe quoted it. Either way, it's a very, very fascinating teaching. When Rivka dresses Yaakov with the clothing of Esav, she wasn't intent in expelling Esav from the family. That wasn't her goal. The goal wasn't let's get rid of Esav. On the contrary, what she wanted to do, she had a brilliant idea how to extend the blessings of Hashem to a Jew who looks like Esav. In other words, the blessing shouldn't only go to a Jew when he is wearing the clothing of Yaakov. She wants the blessing to reach all of her children, all of her grandchildren, all the Jewish people, wherever they will be in all of the future history, whoever they are, however they're dressed. So even if there will be a Yaakov, there will be one of her children, one of her grandchildren, who looks like an Esav, he should be part of the family. If Yaakov would have received the blessings as Yaakov, then the blessing would have only been to a Yaakov the way Yaakov looks like a Yaakov. But Rivka knew that life isn't so simple, and there is a time when Yaakov may look like Esav. And there will be Jews who will discard the shtetl clothing, discard the clothing of the little town they're born in, and they'll throw their old clothing into the Yam Suf, into the sea, and they'll put on new clothing. They will wear modern clothing. And what Rivka wanted to accomplish is to establish that all of our children are our children. The clothing doesn't define who a Jew is. The soul is what defines who a Jew is. When Yitzchak blesses Yaakov, Yaakov wearing the clothing of Esav, he's empowering all of his grandchildren that they are able to ascend beyond their clothing. That they're always able to remember in every event that they're Hashem's children, that they're part of the Jewish people, despite whatever they're wearing, despite however they look, despite whatever they're going through, they're able to cast off their external trappings and to remember that they're Hashem's children. And this explains something else. Torah says that when Yitzchak met Yaakov wearing the clothing of Esav, he sent it, the scent of the clothing to Yitzchak, it says, was like the scent of heaven. Look, the scent of the clothing is like the scent of the field that God has blessed. What is the scent of the field is referring to? He's referring to the field of Gan Eden. The field of God, he senses in Yaakov's clothing, the clothing of Esav, he feels the scent of Gan Eden. What was unique over here in this clothing of Esav? How come we never smelled that scent when Esav wore the clothing? What's going on? Esav would visit his father every day. Esav honored his father in a way that the Talmud says was challenging to the sages of the Talmud. One of the sages of the Talmud explained that he never could reach anything close to the honor that Esav gave his father. For example, he said Esav would wear golden clothing. I think he honored his father. He would wear special clothing. And this sage of the Talmud didn't do that every time he saw his father. So how is it that all of a sudden the garments of Esav have this different fragrance when they're the same garments? The question is even greater if you look in the Medrash. The Medrash says that Al Tikri Begodav El Boigav. Don't read the word clothing to mean clothing. The word clothing has the same root as the word treachery. This refers to Yosem Mishisa and Yukom Misheres. This refers to these two Jews later on in history, Yosem Mishisa and Yukom Misheres, who will be treacherous to the Jewish people. So the question again is, what's going on? This is the scent of Gan Eden, the scent of heaven. Jews who were treacherous to Hashem. That's the scent of heaven. Who were Yosef Mishisa? Who was Yaakov Misheres? Later on in history, the time of the second destruction, when the Romans ruled over Yerushalayim and they reached the gates of the temple, they wanted to go in. They were afraid of divine retribution. So they found a Jew in the street and they asked him if he would go in and be the first one to enter the temple. You know, they didn't want to walk in the temple and make the first move. He asked this Jew, would you go in first? And they told him, if you go in, we'll give you whatever you want from your temple. You could take anything you want. Anything you want from your temple, we will accept as yours. Yosef Mishisa agrees. He walks in the temple, and he comes out with the golden menorah. And the Romans see this huge golden menorah, and like, whoa! When we said everything, we meant everything but the menorah, not that. That you obviously can't take the menorah. Take something else. So all of a sudden, Yosef Mishisa is aroused with inspiration to return to Hashem. Hearing the Romans say, "Go in again, take something else." And, you know what, guys? I'm done. It's okay. Have the menorah. I'm not going in again. What do you mean? You go in again and take something else? No, I'm not going in again. He said, I angered my creator once, I don't want to anger him again. They said, we'll give you the taxes of Jerusalem for 3 years. But he didn't do it. He didn't go in. They tortured him. And he still wouldn't go into the temple. That's Yosef Mishis. Who is Yaakov Misheres? 200 years before this, when the Greeks entered Jerusalem, and they took Yosef ben Yazar, one of the greatest sages of Israel, to be hung. He was the head of the Jewish court. Yosef ben Yazar, the head of the Jewish court, had a nephew who was a renegade, and he was someone who joined the Greeks. He converted to join the Greeks and to be like the Greeks. He was called one of the Misyavanim, one of the Jews who assimilated to be with the Greeks. So Yosef ben Yoezer is placed on a horse on his way to be hung. And who does he meet of all people? And at that moment, he meets his nephew. He meets his nephew, the Yochum Yisheres, Yochum, who was a renegade Jew, who was also riding on a horse. And he says to his uncle, look at you, look at me. I'm riding on a horse, and you're riding on a horse. Look what your path of life has gotten you. Look where I've gotten. Look where I am. So Yosef ben Yezer says to him, Yaakov, if this is what God does to those who violate God's will, if God is giving you such a blessing for violating His will, the affluence that you have for violating Hashem's will is so great. How much more so is the reward for those who do God's will? So those words said by the head of the Sanhedrin, said by Yosef ben Yezer, were from his heart, from his soul, and somehow they penetrated into the soul of this wayward Jew. And this inspired him, this touched him. And so he came home and he decided to give himself as an atonement the 4 kinds of death penalties that are administered for various sins. Somehow he killed himself using all 4 methods of torture, of death penalties, of death by chenek, by choking, by the sword, by fire, and by stone. Somehow he does all four methods of how he's able to kill himself, was he allowed to or not? Different question, but that's what he did. He felt the need to atone for his ways, and that's what he did. His uncle, Yosef ben Yezer, suddenly that moment was sort of dreaming, and he saw the coffin of his nephew, and he said to himself, smiling, "My nephew has reached heaven before me." That's what Yosef ben Yezer said. My nephew reached heaven before me. So these are the renegades of the Jewish people. This is the scent that came out of Yaakov when he went to see his father. The scent of Judaism, which ultimately is victorious. Yes, Yesei, Yeshisa, and Yocham Yesheris lived lives that leave much to be desired, but there's a scent of Yiddishkeit, a scent of something in them that was just waiting for someone to arouse that spark. That's who they were. It's more of a contemporary story. Unfortunately, we just lost last night one of the Rebbe's emissaries, and this week there's end this week, God willing, is going to be the gathering of Chabad emissaries in New York, and what is the role of an emissary of the Rebbe? What are they meant to do? In the very last talk the Rebbe gave to the emissaries, the Rebbe said that we need to prepare the world to be Mashiach. And that's achieved by sharing the Torah and mitzvahs in all places in the world, under all kinds of conditions, including this Jew just passed away, Beethoven, from Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Emirates, Islam. So I want to share with you just one story that just highlights a little taste of what the mission is like. There's a emissary of the Rebbe in Moravia, in Spain, and his name is Rabbi Mendy and Tebi. Mendy, second name is Mendy Atal. Sorry, Mendy Atal. Mendy Atal lives in a city where there are very few Jews, and he's very tired. You know, it's Rosh Hashanah, and he is day full of activity. Rosh Hashanah, the prayers, the blowing the shofar, and he comes home for the meal, and can imagine how he's knocked out. Then he remembers there was one guy in the synagogue that usually comes that wasn't there that day. Doesn't know why he wasn't there. He decides he's going to go visit this guy in Bo Shofar. Where does this guy live? He lives 2 hours away. 2 hours there, 2 hours back. He's going to go. He invites one of the yeshiva students who's there to celebrate Rosh Hashanah with him. I'm with him, and they, it's 2 hours away. But the Rebbe says how important it is for every Jew to hear the shofar. They're going to go. They walk for 2 hours. They get to the guy. Drive at his home. Guy says, "Oh, shofar, I did it already. There's a little synagogue near my house, and I went there." You can imagine how they felt. They're completely crushed. And they walk back. They're not talking too much to each other on the way back. You know, they walked all this distance for nothing. But they forgot about it. Life goes on. A few months later, Rabbi Atal gets a call from this woman who wants to meet him. She is living there in Spain for a few generations, and she doesn't know too much about Judaism. But she said, this past Rosh Hashanah, I saw you walking together with someone else and carrying a shofar. It made me realize, that I want to be connected to this. I'm trying to find you for all this time. I couldn't figure out how to reach you. I finally found you on the internet. Not to reach out. I want to learn something about my heritage and what it means to be a Jew. So fast forward, this woman came to their Passover Seder and made steps and brought her somewhere. He went in the streets for 2 hours on his journey that ended up seemingly in nowhere. But there was somewhere that he arrived in. He didn't know. The same as with the blessing that Rivka got for her son Yaakov, dressed in the clothing of Esau. She accomplishes that a Jew who looks like Esau, he should also receive the blessing of Yaakov, the blessing of Yitzchak, the blessing of Torah, the blessing of mitzvahs. That's what the mission of the Rebbe's emissaries is, to reach every Jew, inspire them, to connect them, to prepare the world for Mashiach when we all realize who we are and what we are. There was a rabbi in Mexico talking with the Rebbe in a private audience. He told the Rebbe about the various things that happens in Mexico. Rabbi Avram Mordechai, what's the last name? Avram Mordechai. There's a rabbi in Mexico. I remember his name in a second. Anyway, so the Rebbe says to him, "But what about the children that are in the street? What do you do for them?" He says, "None of our children are in the street." And the Rebbe says, "Aren't all children our children?" That's the idea of the Rebbe sending the Emerson. Every child is our children. No one that the Rebbe looks at as not being part of the Jewish people. He may be wearing the clothing of Esau, but he is Yaakov. He is Yaakov, and that's why the Medrash says, "I smell in the scent of the clothing of Yaakov, Gan Eden." The clothing of Esau. The Jew is wearing the clothing of Esau. The Jew is enmeshed in all kinds of Esau-like activities. And what does Yitzchak smell in the scent of the clothing of Yaakov, in the scent of the treachery of Yaakov's of the clothing of Esau, which again the Medrash means the clothing of Esau. The word clothing means treachery. He smells in the treachery. His Yiddishkeit, his Judaism. There's a Yid there. There's a Neshama there. That's who we are. They should help us all. We should see the goodness in each other, and we should take upon ourselves to be an emissary of the Rebbe, to reach out to other Jews, and to make it happen. This is also the anniversary of the passing of the emissaries of the Rebbe to Mumbai. Their anniversary of passing the 27th of Cheshvan this week as well. Since when they were killed, I don't want to lose inspiration, so I made a decision then to send out a minute of Torah every day. Since they died, every day minute of Torah, and millions of minutes of Torah have been shared since then. But we have this passing. This emissary, the Rebbe, can't leave us with just like, okay, another tragedy. Unfortunately, there are too many tragedies going on. You do something to connect more with the Rebbe's mission, so that we may be wearing the clothing of Esau, but we are the children of Yitzchak. We are all emissaries of the Rebbe. Gotta get involved. L'chaim, l'chaim. A great Yeshua Shema, great Rebbe.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Ramo.